Hello and welcome to Champ Select, your go-to competitive Legends of Runeterra podcast. I'm Alex, as per usual. Joining me are two co-hosts, Noble,
Lulu,
and Hugh.
Hello.
Today, we've had about a week since the patch came out, right? We've all been playing a lot since the new patch came out, and one thing is for sure, there's a lot of aggro floating around nowadays. It's become a very aggro-dominated ladder, which is interesting, and it's been a while since we've seen a meta like this. I mean, most of the time when I think back to the best decks of Legends of Runeterra, they've pretty much all been mid-range control stuff.
except like that period where like all the burn cards were just like a little overtuned, and that was all anyone was doing.
Yeah. So anyway, today we're gonna go into the new meta that's been developing and talk a lot about how to attack these new prevalent aggro decks. Spiders is finally at the forefront. It's what
Tier 1, I think.
Tier 1, almost certainly. You said you had a kind of ridiculous fact that I just heard.
Yeah, checking out the Legends Runeterra metagame tier list over at Runeterra CCG, which is not sponsored by them or anything, but they're a great resource. Spider aggro is the most popular deck in every rank and keeps finding success, which makes sense. It's like easy to play. You start out with, the champions the deck plays, which is I think only Elise, right?
Yeah.
Which you start with.
You start
right?
with two Elises. Like, it's just easy to play, easy to put together. Games are very quick and pretty hard to disrupt. Frenzied Skitterer is just like insane.
That card is messed up. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolute nonsense.
You've what have you been playing lately, Hugh? Have you been slamming people with pirates still, or?
So I played a bunch of pirates, got to like Diamond 2, and then I like streamed for a bit and played not pirates because it's not as fun to watch. And I played like cool stuff, which
huge mistake,
which is worse. And eventually just like lost down to Diamond 4 0 LP. And I was like,
see it.
yeah, it was fine though, because I was just like, all right, well, I guess we'll just like play something fast and good now. And so I just like put spiders together and instantly went 6-0 with it. And I was like,
So you're part of the problem.
I mean, I always will be. That's
That's the way it is.
That's the key to actually being successful.
Is being the problem.
Yeah, being the problem. Anyway,
You hate to hear it.
spiders is just it's just fast. It's just really fast. Like games last like 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is real big upside. Meanwhile, I've been playing a lot of TLC, a lot of Trundle Lysandra, and let me tell you, those games are not fast at all. Like, you just can't win before turn 8.
Yeah,
ever.
Literal
impossible.
Whenever you're playing against that deck and you're like, do I have to worry about what they're doing besides disrupting me? Do they have 8 mana? Yes or no?
Yeah, that's all it is.
That's it. Yeah.
It's like, do they have 8 mana? Yes or no? If no, then play around Avalanche and Blighted Ravine. And like, that's basically the game. Like, regardless, TLC has been really good for me.
Yeah.
Like really good. Like, I went from Diamond 3-0 LP all the way up to Diamond 180 LP. Lost my last boss battle. I got kicked in the mouth a little bit. I'm in like 20 or 40 LP in Diamond 1 right now at the time that we're recording this. Hoping to hit Masters probably tonight, ideally.
TLC secretly stands for Trundle Lysandra Crushes Aggro.
That really is what I've been doing. Like, everybody's been playing all these spider decks, and let me tell you, your deck's really good against spider stuff, and you have some draws that sometimes you just lose. You know, you've got these 3/8 drops in your deck that you have to play, and you know, like, your deck has some vengeances, some runations, so like you can have slow starts. But this is some nice tech that I recently did this morning that I was very happy with. I took out all of my Catalyst of Aeons.
Yeah,
I just put in some Kindly Tavern Keepers and an Ice Shard and an extra Ice Shard. It's been phenomenal so far. It's so good. Like,
that makes it like, what if instead of gaining a mana gem, you got a virtual mana gem by setting
blocking
your opponent's clock back by multiple turns?
Yeah, it's really good. So like, for all you Trundle Lysandra players out there, if you aren't already on it, I highly recommend the -3 Catalyst of Aeons plus some Kindly Tavern Keepers. I did -3 Catalyst plus 3 Kindly Tavern Keepers, and then I also found room for an extra Ice Shard somewhere in there. I don't quite remember where, but
Fun fact, I've only not been playing Legends of Runeterra for one balance patch when it was released. I was reading back through the balance patches that I was joking about last week, and it was only the first one that I don't remember. And this was like when it was out of closed beta and when it was open beta. So only one in open beta that I wasn't there for that I don't remember reading. And in that one, Catalyst of Aeons went from 4 to 5 mana, and like Anivia stopped being a 4/2 that couldn't block for 6 mana and became like the 7 mana 2/4, and now it's gone back down. And Rekindler used to be a 6 mana 5/5. Just everybody can think about that one a little bit.
God.
They really love, I don't know what it is, but they really love making the stats on their 5 drops just like a little too high. Like it happened with the guy that makes Sleep with the Fishes, Jack the Winner. He was like a 5/6 for a while.
Yeah, Jack the Winner.
Like Radiant Guardian was a 5/5 with tough. Like
Garen.
Yeah, Garen used to be he used to be a 6/6, I think.
Wait, I don't.
Yeah.
Wait, actually,
so, yeah.
I was just joking.
like in closed beta. Yeah.
Oh wow.
They really like.
How about that?
It's just kind of random, but they like often just like make their random 5 mana guy that produces value stats just like a little too big. And maybe it's just that those are the easy things to nerf on those cards. But
yeah, those are like the easy dials. So anyway, have you guys played a lot of these aggro decks? So like I said, I've been playing a lot of TLC, which has been my answer to like, man, there's a lot of aggro. I'm just going to try and slam them with my Withering Wails and my Blighted Ravines and my Avalanches, and it's quite effective. But I don't know, have you guys been dipping your toes into the aggro, playing a little more mid-rangey stuff?
I have always liked playing like slightly off meta decks, unless the meta deck is TF Fizz, because that deck's so fun. But I've actually been jamming some Go Hard recently. It's been fun. Yeah.
Has that been any good? It should be in theory, I think.
So I'm playing kind of a wonky list. I have 1 Elise. Going back to our roots, we have 1 Elise, 3 Twisted Fates, 2 Gangplanks, and I'm playing 2 Dread Wraiths and 2 Ledroses.
I played a ridiculous game against Go Hard on stream the other day, but with TLC. But has that been good? Is it time for us to play some more Go Hard?
It has felt pretty good. Like every time that you like bank a mana on turn 1 and then play the Kegmaker into Go Hard on turn 2, it's like really, really good. And playing the Withering Wails. Maybe I should put those petty officers back in, but like, playing TF fairly with like kegs and stuff again.
Seems
very
nice.
Strong. Yeah.
Because I remember the last time Go Hard, yeah, became or was like the best thing to be doing. And even before then was like the Twisted Fate, Make It Rain decks, right? Like TF Swain, basically. Those decks were spawned by the existence of these like a really hyperactive, hyper aggro meta, right? Where like people were trying to play Make It Rain and stuff like that to deal with all these X1s. Yeah. And then Go Hard came out, and we haven't really seen the like X1 meta since then. But like I think we're back. Like I think it's X1 tribal time.
Weird side note, I do bet that Lysandra Swain is like a totally reasonable choice right now. Like Swain is really good into the aggro decks. You're so good at flipping him with Ice Shard and Avalanches that I actually just like bet that's quite good. And you get all the good Freljord stuff. It might be worse than Trundle Lysandra, but it sounds more fun. So.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. I played that back. Well, that was one of the things I tried first when Lysandra just released, and it worked fine. But my approach so far is for the aggro meta has just sort of been, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
I could beat them,
reasonable.
but
then you have to play like TLC, and those games take so long.
Yeah, I don't want to beat them because even if you're the problem with trying to beat aggro is if you're trying to beat aggro, no matter what you're doing, no matter how teched you are, you will still just lose sometimes.
It's true
because. 1, you're going to play against it a lot, and 2, aggro decks just have so much explosive potential, and you still need to draw the cards you've teched for the matchup. Like,
yeah,
because
and sometimes they're just not good enough anyway. Like,
yeah, and also like you could have all 3 copies of Withering Wail, and it's just like, well, I have. Like I had a game where
Withering Wails, yikes!
I had a game where my opening hand was triple what's it called?
What deck were you playing?
Rear guard.
Oh, triple Legion rear guard?
Yeah, triple Legion rear guard and a decimate.
So that's the 3/2, right?
Yeah, the one mana
3/2 they can't block. Yeah.
Yeah, it can't block.
I was just confirming that we were playing this card after it got buffed again.
Yeah. No.
That's all I was saying.
Yeah, it's in spiders
That is
because
disgusting.
the cards. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I and I had the attack token on turn 2. So I just, turn 1, that, turn 2.
Pop.
2 of them. swing for 9.
It is disgusting how often you get like attacked for like 6+ on turn 2 in this game.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely
It's ridiculous.
heinous. Yeah, and that's part of the reason aggro is so effective is because of the attack token mechanic. Your creatures actually can attack the same turn they come out, which is very, very different from every other card game in existence.
Yeah, it leads to these like really explosive starts, and is why I think it's often so hard to combat these aggro decks.
Yeah, I mean that's how it was with TF Fizz, right? Like that deck would not have been a problem if you had to play all of your Burblefish, then pass, and then you got to attack.
Yeah, it wouldn't be nearly as bad, right? Yeah. So I guess we wanted to spend a little bit of time. Oh yeah, no.
Just sorry, one last thing. Another thing to talk about real quick is the Twin Suns tournament. That this was this last weekend.
Yeah, definitely.
There are like some results from it. There's like a pretty cool spreadsheet on Twitter, but it kind of looked like the biggest bait, the low win rate, high play rate deck was Spider Burn. So in a tournament setting, wasn't performing quite as well. The best deck with a high win rate and high play rate was Traditional Scouts, and the underrated low play rate, high win rate was Draven Ezreal. Kind of nonsense. Oh, which is the Puff Caps Burn deck.
Oh, it's the Puff Caps Burn version?
It's a Draven Ezreal / Puff Caps. Okay, this is probably regular as Draven. Sorry, I read that as Draven Teemo for some reason. Yeah.
So Draven Ezreal is a deck that I've seen a little bit of lately too that's been getting more popular. But I know that what we want to talk about in general, so now that there's so much aggro, I think it's important to talk about how exactly should you go about beating aggro in this game, because
or at least navigating this meta, not like
more necessarily how does one navigate the meta given all of the aggro? You can try to play aggro mirrors, and I guess that's like probably a pretty good place to start. Is what do the aggro mirrors look like, right? If you're trying to play this spider deck, you're going to run into it a lot. It's the most played deck in every play tier, right? In every rank. So I don't know, Hugh, you've played the spider deck the most out of the three of us, I think, or just aggro the most in the three of us. How do you normally go about piloting the mirrors?
So oh, you can go ahead.
I just wanted to real quickly ask you, Hugh, because I actually haven't played any games with this spider aggro deck right now. Like, what exactly does this deck look like right now? Like, there have been a lot of spider decks over the course of Legends of Runeterra. So, like, what is this deck looking like?
So
right
basically, the deck just looks like 1-drop tribal abusing shadow.
Stalking Shadows.
Stalking Shadows. Yeah. That card's absolutely dirty. Disgusting.
Yeah. Doom Beast, right? So you're playing Doom Beast.
Yes.
Cool.
And that is like we're playing 3 Doom Beasts, 2 Arachnoid Sentries. There's a bunch of
Here, let me just read off the list that I have imported.
Mobilytics is the one I'm using because I think it's the best one. The one that's just on the
Here, I just opened my client on my phone, so I'll just read off the list that I have. This list has 1 Fading Memories, 3 Legion Rearguard, 3 Legion Saboteur, 3 Precious Pet, 3 Stygian Onlooker, 3 Arachnoid Horror, 3 Elise, 3 House Spider, 2 Imperial Demolitionist, 3 Stalking Shadows, 2 Arachnoid Sentry, 3 Doom Beast, 3 Frenzied Skitterer, 2 Noxian Fervor, and 3 Decimates.
Okay.
Yeah,
Capped at 5 mana, Decimate is the most expensive card in our deck by 2.
Yeah.
We have no 4-drops. It could just go straight to 5 Decimates, muck these Captain Farrons that make the Decimates. That was awful. Like, we're just going real low.
So the deck is extremely low to the ground. And as I'm sure you noticed, like half the deck is 1-drops. So if you have the attack token on turn 2, I've had games where on turn 2 I've swung for 9. On turn 3 I've swung for, I think I swung for, oh God, like
15, 20.
Like something like not quite 20, almost 20.
You can like dump your whole hand. Yeah.
Easily dump your whole hand. Yeah. It was like, I think I swung for 22 on turn 3 one time. Because I went like turn 1 Legion Rearguard, turn 2, Legion Rearguard, Legion Saboteur, turn 3, Fading Memories, a thing. And then I think I Fading Memories, Legion Saboteur, and then played 2,
Precious Pets?
No, the 4-1. The one.
Oh, Stygian Onlookers.
Stygian Onlookers.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So I just like dumped my hand with 2 of 4-1s with Fearsome, and then like
it's very easy
attacking for like 12 on top of that. So it was 20.
Yeah, that's 20. Yeah, that's awesome.
I swung for 20 on turn 3. Like, you can just do that with this deck. And you know, even if you're a deck tech to beat aggro, even if you're a deck with all sorts of tools to win, like TLC, the prime example, you just sort of lose to
can't
that.
beat that.
So what I'm
yeah.
hearing is Legion Rearguard re-nerf incoming.
Probably not.
doesn't-
But I think the real nerf should probably go to Frenzied Skitter.
Oh, do you think this deck needs a nerf?
I don't think it needs a nerf. I'm just saying if it
Gets one?
for like, I'm not gonna. Sorry, I should say I don't think
Too early to tell.
I think it's too early to tell. It's possible that it could need a nerf, maybe.
We don't descend into nerf culture here. We strongly believe on playing the cards that you're dealt / gifted by our Legend of Runeterra designer gods on high.
So
and winning with them.
the thing that is the most difficult to deal with is the amount of fearsome creatures in the deck. It's just like Frenzy. Like I said, Frenzied Skitter is just
Frenzied Skitter has to be the best card in the mirror, right?
in the mirror. Yes. So the way you beat the mirror is just you mull for fearsome creatures, and whoever has more wins generally is how it goes.
Because they can't block.
Interesting.
them.
Because they can't block, and you
See, this is good
outrace them.
tech. I wouldn't have guessed that.
And like
Yeah.
probably Doom Beast too, like Stalking Shadows for Doom Beast is probably really good. But I guess you don't want Doom Beasts in your open
Doom Beast is
hand.
actually like really slow. Doom Beast is much better against control, where they like, or against like mid range,
Or you
where
just need the reach.
you need the reach, and the extra 2 health is actually really relevant when I found it to be most relevant in the like LeBlanc matches, because that deck has very little trample creatures until like turn 5. So you can actually just chump away your board over and over again and then get in for a little bit of damage. And by the end, you're facing down a board of 5x creatures, 5 power creatures, and they have a full board, and you have like 3 2/2s, and you're like, I can't win now. So that's when your Doom Beast, blocks a thing, gains you 2 life, and pings them for 2.
And you want to do that a couple times, and then
And then
finish
there
them
and
with the Decimate
a
or
couple
whatever.
times kills them generally, because you also have Decimate, you also have Noxie and Fervor, stuff like that. And honestly, so I guess where I'm going with this is like, in general, in an aggro meta, I feel the best thing to do to try and be successful is, one, take the top 2 or 3 most played aggro decks. So in this meta, I think that's Spiders, Discard, and Teemo Burn.
Sand Scouts. Yeah.
Maybe Sand Scouts.
There's a lot of Teemo Burn. There's a lot of Sand Scouts. There's a lot of Scouts. There's a lot of
Scout.
I've been seeing.
Scoot.
There's still a lot of various Endure packages.
I've been seeing the Endure and the Scouts kind of fall, Sand Scouts at least, fall off kind
they've
of.
fallen off a little bit for
But,
sure. I think Discard Aggro and Spiders are the 2 most
Yeah,
popular.
definitely
by
the
a
2
lot.
most. The third spot is in contention. But basically, play the top 2 or 3 lists of aggro decks for at least 5 games, because probably more than that. You don't need to play more than that, but the games are so fast that you might as well. Learn the deck a little bit, because the biggest mistake I found people make is that they don't know when to trade away their creatures.
Yep.
Like, the game I mentioned where I dropped 3 Legion Rearguards on turn 2 and swung. The guy had a flipped Teemo on that turn, because he'd gone turn 1 Teemo attack, and then when I swung, he double Teemo spell, like champ spelled. And so he flipped his Teemo on turn 2, and he just didn't block.
Yeah, that's not okay. Yeah,
Which is wrong.
Lesson 1: how to beat aggro. Block. You got to block.
And the rationale from him, I'm sure, was, okay, but if I block with this Teemo and I lose it, I'm not going to ever win the game. I'm playing to not lose
win.
instead of playing to win,
which is
something
true sometimes. Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
something we've talked about, and something we've said that you need to not do. You need to play to win. You need to make sacrifices, take risks. However, when I say you need to play the aggro deck to get a feel for when to trade, you'll learn exactly how much you don't want your opponent to trade there. Like, you're sitting as the pilot for the aggro deck, you're sitting there. Like, I was sitting there watching this board state play out, and I was like, please God, do not block one of my Legion Rearguards with your Teemo. Please don't do it. And he didn't, and I was thrilled.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if my opponent had just heard my inner monologue, like could read my mind, they would have blocked.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so often you're going to find that the thing that feels bad for you to do as the defender from the aggro deck is going to feel much worse for the aggro player.
Yeah.
Because they want to get through with their creatures as quickly as possible, as early as possible. Because beyond turn 3, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Usually, if they're if they're playing Noxus, they have Decimates, they have Noxian Fervors, they have all sorts of things that can kill you from 7. Like, they don't need to get you to 0 with their creatures. They need to get you low with their creatures and then kill you with burn.
If I may, real quick, or one sec, then I'll pass it to Noble. I think that one of the so that play to win not versus play to not lose thing, that's a slippery slope when you're talking about aggro decks this fast, because the power in these aggro decks is that they force you to beat them. Like you need to not die. That's your plan. That's how you win. Whatever your deck's game plan is, in theory, let's think about Trundle Lysandra, right? Trundle Lysandra is going to win the game by Spectral Matroning out a Watcher on turn 8 or so, right? How does Trundle Lysandra win against spiders? It does not matter. The only way that you win is if they don't kill you, right? Like, that's your win condition. When you're playing against these decks, it doesn't matter what your deck's game plan is. Your deck's game plan needs to become don't die, because you're going to win eventually. It doesn't matter, right? You have any number of 4 mana creatures in your deck, or 5 mana, like literally anything that generates some amount of value, you're eventually going to win against this deck. As long as you don't die, you're eventually going to win. So I think it's really important that when you queue into these aggro decks, you need to mentally shift your game plan to, I can't die. That's it. That's the plan.
Yep.
Anyway, you were going to say.
I would like to say, while I do agree with that, it is very important that your deck has a way to win the game that isn't like if your plan is that I'm going to play a pair of Screeching Dragons and just beat my opponent down. That is not going to be good enough against aggro decks in this game. You do need a plan that actually kills them, but until you need to get there, you need to be in just try as hard as you possibly can.
Yeah, you cannot try to. You cannot.
You do need to Ledrus them eventually. You cannot just kill them by attacking with a White Flame Protector for 5 turns. That is not going to be good enough. But you really need to not die.
Yeah. You need to be willing to make medium trades to protect your life total, because your life total is both players' win condition, right? If you have. I keep using TLC examples because that's a deck I've been playing the most and they come to mind. But let's say we have our Lysandra, right? Flipping your Lysandra is a good game plan to win the game, right? You're not going to flip your Lysandra before turn 8. Guess what? You're going to win the game on turn 8 anyway most of the time. Just playing normal Spectral Matrons, just casting Spectral Matron is usually going to be able to win the game against spiders because, or a Trundle. Just attacking with flipped Trundle. That's going to win the game, right? You don't have to combo them. You don't have to flip your Lysandra. You have to block with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot not block with your Lysandra. You have to trade. And ideally, your Lysandra is going to get 2 creatures, and that's great. But, you can't eat the first creature and then not eat the second one. You do need to block most of the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring the discussion back a little bit and talk about what I look for when I look at an aggro deck list. What things that matter, differentiating one aggro deck from the other. Because I actually think Legends of Runeterra is pretty unique in that the matchup tables are pretty different when you're talking about discard aggro, scouts, spiders, and one of these ephemeral aggro decks. Right? They're very good against different decks. They're good against different mid-range decks. It's not like TLC is good against all of them. TLC is, I'm going to go out on a limb, I think TLC is much worse against the Thresh Nasus deck than it is against the Pirates or whatever. Or actually, in fact, it's probably worse against Pirates than it is against discarded aggro and so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. I think Pirates is probably the one might be the one that's the best positioned. I don't know. TLC has a lot of healing and a lot of RAS, but I think the
TLC isn't the best example.
Yeah, maybe TLC just isn't the best example, especially because right now it's such a heavy I've got the best answer. TLC isn't that great against the LeBlanc type aggro decks, usually. Yeah, totally. Or the ones that are just with slightly bigger creatures instead of the X ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important to know. The first thing that I look at is it's really important to know what the aggro deck's plan is, particular plan is, how they're going to win the game. And a huge part of that in this game is whether or not they're have very much reach. And
Yeah,
that almost
big.
always, the answer to that question is almost always like, are they playing Noxus? Because that means they're playing Decimate and you need to play around it versus, like the reach of a
Scout's deck.
a Scout's deck,
Which is
not having
non-existent.
reach. They just need to be like reach being ways to deal damage directly to the face. They can have really powerful turns, but if at all times you have 6/1/1s on the board, Scouts will never kill you. Like that's obviously an extreme example, but that's not true of Spiders, right? Spiders will kill you if at all times you just had 6/1/1s in play. Both because of fearsome creatures and because of things like Decimate. So that's very important to know. Also, you need to know how to play around their quote-unquote bombs. This is huge for me when thinking about specifically discard aggro. That deck is very low to the ground, but it's not going to kill you with 1-drop into 1-drop, 1-drop very often. It is going to kill you with Jinx. It is going to kill you with Crowd Favorite.
Yep,
It's going to kill you with huge vision turns. Like I've lost an uncountable number of games to discard aggro in which I wiped their board on repeat and was at 20 and then just still died to Jinx or Crowd Favorite.
Jinx, I feel like Jinx is the only card that ever kills me out of that deck.
Yeah, absolutely. But it always does.
Yeah, but it always does. That's the thing. When you're playing again, and the hardest part is you can have these plans, and I think this is most relevant in discard when playing against discard aggro. You can have this plan of I'm going to save this removal spell for Jinx. Like I can't cast Vengeance. I can't cast Vengeance on this Draven because I have to Vengeance this Jinx. But eventually,
Have to Vengeance Draven.
you're gonna have to Vengeance Draven if you can't kill it. Right?
Absolutely.
What is it? You can't take 3. Right? Your life total matters. This is just what we talked about. This has to be your plan, is protect your life total. And so eventually you're going to get put in the bind of, well, I just hope they don't have it. And that's the bind that aggro players are trying to put you in, right? Like, and that's why I think he was like, play the deck, because like you're going to see that bind from the other side, right?
Absolutely.
Where it's like, you feel it from your side, you're going to feel it from the other side, right? Like, you never want to go to 4 against Spiders. Why? They have 3 Decimates in their deck. So you should basically assume that your life total is 16. You should basically assume that if you hit 4, you've lost, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to have to go to 3 and hope they don't have it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it kind of just is the way of the world. And it's really hard to know when you have to go to 3 or 4 to be able to have any chance or whatever. Yeah. But like,
Scouts is similar. Like if you can't, like you have to beat the early rush, but then you also have to beat an Inspiring Marshal that is going to attack and put like 2/3/1s into play.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a lot of damage. Like you need to be able to beat that. You need to be able to beat rallies on crucial turns. You need to have your game plan beat the point. And, there are always spots in games where you have to decide, oh, I'm going to lose to this. If they have it, that's okay. But when you're crafting your deck's game plan against their deck, so this is less about specific decks or games and more about like
the plan.
Yeah. Knowing what your plan is in the matchup, you have to be able to beat Jinx. You have to be able to beat, Flip Azir and Inspiring Marshals that are going to be hard to remove because they're so big. You have to be able to beat a giant Nasus in addition to being able to beat the aggressive starts.
Yeah. So I think that, real quick, I think that when you're playing against Spiders, we talked about that big turn. I think so for discard aggro, it's Jinx. You need to be thinking about Jinx every turn of the game, pretty much. Like maybe not turn 1 or turn 2, but like pretty much the rest of the game. You need to be thinking about Jinx. You need to have a plan for it. Yeah. Out of Spiders, I think it's Frenzied Skitterer.
Yeah.
That card will kill you really hard, especially if you're playing another deck that's playing a lot of creatures. That one is so potent. There are just some turns where frenzied, like especially the double frenzied Skitterer turns. Oh man, those are, you just like can't block at all most of the time. They're just gonna kill you from like 15.
Yeah, if they like went Precious Plat into Elise, you're like, you better bet this frenzied Skitterer is going to kill you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I like thinking about frenzied Skitterer out of that deck every turn. You have to think about it. Can I block? Can I afford to, like, if they play frenzied Skitterer, am I gonna die if I make this play? Like that's a lot of the time something you have to ask yourself. Like sometimes absolutely. The answer is yes.
Yeah. I would say that on top of that, something, just a general rule of thumb for the playing against the Spiders deck is if it has Fearsome, block it. Just kill it. Anything that doesn't have Fearsome, you can chump it. It's fine. You'd like trade for it, but you don't have to. But you need to kill the things with Fearsome because if you let them live and you let them hit a critical mass, and a critical mass for this deck is like 2 or 3. Yeah. Then that Frenzied Skitter is just going to kill you.
Yep.
Because you're going to sit there with your board of like two 2/2s and two 3/3s and be like, I can block 2 of these. This 2/2 will block one thing without fearsome, and then the other 2/2 will do nothing because it can't block anything else. And then he plays one Frenzied Skitter, and suddenly you're just dead.
Yeah, it's like 10 damage to the face, and you have to make bad blocks.
Yeah. Or you can't make blocks at all.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen a lot, and you're going to have to just anticipate that. Yeah, if it has fearsome, block it. That's just a general rule for the Spiders deck. But like I said before, just you need to know what to be afraid of as the pilot of the aggro deck, because once you this is true for any deck really. If you're struggling to beat any particular deck, or you find yourself constantly saying, this deck is bullshit, this deck is overpowered, I can't beat this deck, take that deck, craft it if you can. Yeah. Some people can't, so
that's okay.
And that's okay. But if you can craft it, play it, one of two things will happen. One, you will learn how to beat the deck, or at least play against it much more effectively. Or two, the deck really is bullshit. The deck really is overpowered.
Congrats,
and
you're playing it.
Yeah, exactly. And now you're going to win.
LP, baby.
Exactly.
Woo!
Yep.
Found the broken deck. That's the goal, right? That's always the goal. Find the broken deck.
So the next time you lose to Tom's Rocket, you're like, how do they always have it?
Oh my God.
Cue
dude.
it up and go 0-3 to make yourself feel better.
I cannot beat that deck. I swear, I can't beat it. Every single time I play against it, just to have everything. I was in a call with Hugh one time, and Hugh gave me the same piece of advice. He's like, no, really, you should just play it. And then that same game, my opponent went like triple Pale Cascade. He went like box to puss, triple Pale Cascade for like Xaxes or whatever on that turn. And I was like, Hugh, this deck is completely unbeatable. I just died on turn 5 to Tom Rocco when he like killed me with a Star Shepherd or something. It was like box to puss, double Pale Cascade for Xaxes or some
Beautiful.
Ridiculous sequence. It
Yeah.
was so
and
nonsense.
then all of a sudden you play Tom Rock and you're like, oh,
Well, Culling Strike, I can't hit that card.
well, no, not that. You sit there and you look at your hand and you realize something really, really important, that the deck is garbage. Like, you're playing a pile of 40 terrible cards, and the only reason it wins is because you're a pretty good pilot, hopefully, and 2, your opponent is terrified.
Prison.
I am the only player in the world that cannot beat that deck with fearsomes back in the day. Like, it was like the best matchup. They had like 3 cards in their whole deck with 3 power, something like that.
Yeah,
like
it's
your
three,
deck just
it's 3 box to pusses.
yeah, your deck
And
just
flipped Kench.
yeah, your deck was just like all of your cards set unblockable, and I don't think I ever won. I think I'm like a 0-7 lifetime
That's
with
absolutely hilarious.
fearsomes against Tom Kench Rocca. It's like the most unlosable matchup. I just couldn't win. It was awful.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, so that's a little bit of the like aggro mirror look. And
Oh, sorry. I didn't actually get to say the thing I wanted about the aggro mirror. 'Cause we got a
Yeah,
little
back to the
sidetracked.
aggro mirror. Let's go there.
So this game is weird. In Magic, the rule of thumb is that the aggro deck in the straight up mirror, the aggro deck that goes a little bigger usually wins, right? Because your aggressive creatures trade off, and then the person who had the ability to draw a couple extra cards, get a little bit of extra value, had a little bit bigger creature.
has a 4/4 instead of a 3/3.
Yeah, we'll end up taking the game home, the indestructible threat or whatever. In this game, I think it's a little different, but I do think similar things come. I do think similar things come through. That, you know, if you're playing an aggro mirror and one of your top ends is Decimate and the other person's top end is Thresh, like the Thresh player is going to win after all of the stuff trades off and you're both at like 15. Like the Thresh is going to kill 3 of your creatures and then flip, and then it's over. So it's a little more context dependent than that, but like, you know, the aggro player putting Jinx into play and flipping her is probably going to win. And so that's kind of where you want to be. You want to be the aggro deck that skews a little bit more towards the mid game than the early game. I think is that y'all's experience?
So something I would do for this game, like you said, this game is weird. Aggro decks look different in this game than in any other game. Partially because there's different categories. So I would classify certain aggro decks as board centric, like Scouts, versus burn centric, like Teemo is the most extreme example. Like the straight up Teemo burn deck, I play Piltover and like Mystic Shot, Get Exciteds, 3 like Afterburns, all that.
So the SI decks are like board focused. The SI Demacia decks are usually board focused, not together, but like SI Sack decks and Demacia decks are
and
board
generally
focused.
the most potent aggro decks have been the ones where turns 1 through 3 are purely board centric, and then turns after that are just, I hope I draw my burn, because those, if you're playing a deck, so, and this is what Spiders is, by the way. Spiders wants to vomit its hand into play for the first 2 to 3 turns, hit you down to like 5, and then just like doesn't really care what happens after that, because by the numbers, it'll draw a Decimate and kill you eventually.
I think that I would go as far as to say that going a little bit bigger is, I think, maybe not the best plan in this game, because I think that, like, I really think that most of the time, the player who wins the board battle early usually wins the aggro matchup, I've found. And I actually think that going bigger makes it so that you're more likely to lose the board battle early. And I think it's so hard to recover with decks that don't have ways to catch up, really. Like, I mean, there's every deck has some form of tempo advantages or cards that are going to generate them tempo or bring them back into the game. But I mean, if you're behind on the board, you know, let's say we're playing discard aggro versus Spiders, right? We're playing discard aggro, and our start is just a little slower than our opponents. You know, we don't have the Zonite Urchin start. You know, our first turn is like a Poro Cannon or whatever. You know, maybe Poro Cannon, a Scrap or Jury Rig or whatever. It's not even that bad, but their early turns are usually a little more effective, right? You know,
They have a Precious Pet. They have like a Legion Regard that you're gonna have to block twice.
Exactly, right. You know, they go like 1-drop, doubled 1-drop, and we go play a 1-drop, and then on turn 2 we don't have that good of a play. So
it's like Battlecaster or something.
yeah, we play like Arena Battlecaster. Like it's a 2-mana 2/2. It's just not as well statted as their cards, right? We make a couple blocks, boom. It's turn 3. Our opponent has a 3/1 Legion Rearguard, right? You know, we trade it off with a Legion Saboteur, and they've got a Precious Pet and another Legion Rearguard. We've got like 2 1/1s.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't really know how discard aggro is supposed to catch up at this point, right? Like, we're behind.
Jinx.
Yeah, the answer is Jinx,
And that's
right?
like the only, but you have to like empty your hand. And
We
like,
have to
there's
empty our
one few
hand,
hoops,
and we have to not die first, right? And if our opponent has Frenzied Skitteroo, we're dead.
Yeah.
We're just dead, right? So I actually think that the best way to win the aggro mirrors is to aggressively mulligan for 1-drops and really try to win the game on turns 1, 2, and 3. Which is interesting because the aggro decks don't have ways to catch up, basically, right? Like, they don't have Avalanche, they don't have Twisted Fate, they don't have any way to catch up. Basically,
sense,
they're just gonna play units that are, you know, reasonably statted, but you have just as efficient statted units, right? So if you win early, you're gonna spend more mana. If the game goes late enough, you'll probably eventually win because you're going to have more cards in your hand because you lost early, right? Or you didn't have as efficient turns early, so you probably have some more late game centric cards. And, you know, maybe cards like Crowd Favorite can kind of catch you back up in theory, but it's hard to get a big Crowd Favorite in these matchups because you have to block, right? We just talked about it, right? Like, you know, you can't just build up this whole board and play a 7/6 Crowd Favorite because you're going to die because you didn't block anything, right? Like, you know, you're going to be at 3 by the time that happens.
Yeah, and like on turn 4, if you're playing a Jinx and they're playing you know, some Stygian Onlookers or like, you know, 1-drop, even just like 1-drop, 2-drop, like, then you have to block, you're just going to get overwhelmed. Like, if every turn when they can attack, they attack you with 3 creatures, you block 2 of them and they hit you for 3, you're going to eventually die. If that is the pace of the game.
And here's I think another reason why I think that the magic like the magic trope of the slightly bigger aggro deck usually wins doesn't hold as true in Legends of Runeterra, and that's every card attacks the turn it comes down.
Yeah.
In Magic, when was the last time you got attacked for 9 on turn 2? Oh, wait. It was like Hogak Vengevine type stuff, right? Like, it doesn't happen.
Yeah,
it does not happen, especially not in aggro decks. They don't have those kind of draws. Those are only combo draws.
Yeah.
You can't attack for 9 in turn 2 on Magic.
Yeah.
That's like not, I mean, there's 6 cards in the deck that if you happen to draw 3 of them, you'll attack for 9 on turn 2. It's like 3 Legion Saboteur, 3 Legion Rearguard.
And also Stygian
Onlookers. You can even attack for more. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's not that hard to attack for 9 on turn 2 in this game. So if you are trying to be the slightly bigger aggro deck and you're like, oh, I'm playing this slightly bigger aggro deck, I'll skip my turn 1, and then on turn 2 I'll cast
House Spider.
Sure, and then I attack you with a
A Stygian Onlooker, a Legion Saboteur.
Stygian Onlooker, a Legion Saboteur, and another Stygian Onlooker. Like, what are you going to do? Take 8 and trade?
Yeah.
Yeah,
9
you can't.
because of the trigger from the
Yeah,
Legion
you're going to
Saboteur.
take 9 and trade. Yeah, we're done here, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
you're just going to die. There's no real way you can catch up after that, I don't think. So
That makes a lot of sense. And I didn't bring that up because I thought it was right. I just thought it was interesting to talk about the differences. And I really agree with you because
Absolutely.
I was getting the feeling that it wasn't quite the same.
Which I also think is interesting because I actually think that magic trope, I've believed it to be true in Legends of Runeterra for a long time because I've never played a card game where it wasn't true.
Yeah.
Right. It was true in Hearthstone, definitely very true in Magic.
Yeah.
Those are the two I have the most experience with, but like I think that it's not true in this game, and I've never seen that in another card game. I think it's really interesting. Do you tend to agree, Hugh? I think you've played more aggro mirrors than any of us probably.
So the biggest problem with this whole topic in general is the thing that's difficult about it is there's so much. How to put this? Okay, here we go. Something that is really cool and I love about this game, and that is very different from other games. There's a bunch of things, but one of the things that I love the most is that where a lot of people in when you go to someone and you say, what's the most complicated and most skill testing Magic deck? And you ask someone that question, they'll probably say some kind of control deck. Like Miracles in Legacy was like arguably the hardest deck to have ever existed in Magic.
Sure.
Right? Like, and that's a control deck. Like, that's a hard control deck.
Good example.
Like
yeah.
that deck will just die to a single 2/2 swinging for 10 turns if you don't do something about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and that'll probably be true in Hearthstone too, like Freeze Mage.
Yeah, Freeze Mage, Handlock, Control Warrior.
Yep, all those
Patron
things.
Warrior, all those are Miracle Rogue. You know, they're
I'm
not
sorry.
aggro decks. That's
I've
for sure.
never played Hearthstone, but the deck names are so cool.
Well, they're just the name of the class.
I know, but like Miracle Rogue?
Miracle Rogue is a cool.
oh, yeah.
Freeze Mage, Miracle Rogue,
Yeah. So
Handlock.
Yeah.
in other games, it's usually a control deck or a combo deck. In Legends of Runeterra, I've found, I don't know if you guys found this to be true, but I've found that control decks are amongst the most brain dead and easy to play, and aggro decks.
Those are fighting words.
And aggro decks are by far consistently the most difficult
So hard.
and skill testing in this
so hard.
game. And that's including discard. Like, people think that discard aggro is just a brain dead turn creature sideways. Like, I'm going to swing with
Well, they
six
don't go
1/1s.
sideways
I
to
know.
start.
I know. That's a Magic term because you turn them sideways in
To
Magic.
tap them, yeah.
But
attack,
yeah. Basically, people think stuff like discard and spiders are just like completely brain dead, and like all you have to do is like put on a blindfold and like slam your face into the keyboard to win games. And that is absolutely not true.
Your Nexus health matters so much. Like, so much more because creatures can attack the turn they can come down. And because you have stuff like Stygian Onlooker, which is like a 1 mana 4 damage that's hard to block, like, your Nexus health matters so much. So you really need to be aggressively trading to
And another thing, you can't go above 20. In
Yeah.
Magic, you can go above 20. That's like,
I'll be honest, I don't think that happens that much in constructed Magic.
it doesn't happen that much, but
It would happen a lot in Constructed Legends of Runeterra, though.
It would happen all the time.
Yes, exactly. Like the amount
Great
of times,
choice by the devs here, huh?
yeah, the amount of times you've slammed your kindly Tavern Keeper on turn 3 and healed for nothing because
zero.
you're at 20.
I've done that 0 times, as we've talked about in the past.
That's fair. But yeah, so that's just another thing. Like 20 is not very much. And when you have 1 cost cards that swing for 3 and swing for 4, and a lot of them,
Doom
and-
Beasts that are 5-point life swings if they don't have a blocker, like
yeah, there's so many things that are like relative to their costs, their mana costs, deal so much damage.
yeah.
And that's why aggro is so explosive. And you really need to be playing these decks at least a little bit just to figure out, because they're also very fragile. You know, they operate on very thin margins most of the time.
The busted ones are the ones that don't.
Exactly. The times where you can roll your face on the keyboard are the times when the deck is too good.
Yeah.
As a player who throughout the history of Legends of Runeterra has consistently played significantly less aggro than the like mid-range or controlling decks, just because I like them more. They're kind of more my thing. Yeah, I totally agree. Like the aggro decks are way harder. Like, and I like playing the controlling the mid-rangey decks a little bit more because my favorite games in this game are the like really hard, long, drawn out, grindy, like a soul versus,
Flip
Thresh
Zoe
Nasus
or
type games, where we're both here for the long haul. I love those games. So I have a tendency to play the decks that create those games, right? But I've played a lot of aggro and it's harder. It's way harder. TLC, I've been playing a lot of TLC. That deck, I'm not going to claim to be the best TLC pilot in the world. But it's hard on a different axis, right? Like the hardest things about that deck is not how you're going to win the game. It's because you know how you're going to win the game. It's how am I going to survive, right? And how are you going to survive is an interesting question. And making sure your removal lines up well is really interesting. And also, I think is one of the skills I'm the best at in this game, which is kind of why I tend to gravitate towards these decks. But like, man, those aggro decks are so hard because. Yeah, with these control decks, you don't have to think about your win condition, right? I mean, you do need to think about how you're going to line it up and all that, but you know how you're going to win. With the aggro decks, you have to slug it out every time to win. Like, you never know how you're going to win. You know you're going to win when their Nexus hits 0, but every time you draw a new hand, your plan is different.
Yeah, you have to line up like exactly in this game. Am I going to do I need to be open attacking right now? Do I need to be a little greedier? Do I need to play around a board wipe? What blockers can my opponent deploy? Like in aggro, it is so important to know exactly what your opponent can do because of the attack token mechanic.
Ooh, and I really want to touch on, and I think you're about to, the difference between open attacking and when you're supposed to open attack versus when you're not.
Yeah, it's so huge with aggro decks. Like making the choice of like being able to sit there and be like, what blockers does my opponent's deck play? Am I safe to put out this Legion Saboteur? Or should I just get in for my 4 with my like precious pets, on turn 3 or whatever?
It's way harder to play around Avalanche than it is to play Avalanche.
Yeah, absolutely. Also. Yeah. And just like trying to figure out exactly how to navigate it is very, very difficult. And it's part of what makes the game great.
Yeah. And so there's going to be several people right now who are totally rolling their eyes and being like, these people are crazy. Like control is way harder, combos way harder, aggro is brain dead. Or even if you're not saying it's brain dead, it's definitely not harder than control, right? To anyone who is thinking that right now,
go play the decks.
That too. But the other thing I was going to say is, think of it this way: in an aggro deck, we'll use spiders as the premier example here.
It's been the premier example of the episode, as it should be, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So look at your average. So take TLC and take spiders. Look at your TLC list, and I want you to tell me, you don't hypothetically, think of the average mana cost of all the cards in the deck.
Well, here, I'll play this with you because I've been playing a lot of TLC. So,
okay.
So let's see. I've brought it down a little bit by replacing my Catalyst with my Kindly Tavern Keepers. We got a couple zeros, not a lot. Most of our deck costs 4 mana or 3 mana. We have a bunch of removal spells. The average CMC of our deck is probably 4.
Yeah,
that something like that. Right.
Yeah,
that's probably where I'd put it.
And only technically it would be a little higher because of the volume of 8s or something like that. But there's so few that it's
there's 3 8-drops and there's 3 0-drops, so that's basically a wash.
So that makes sense.
It's probably about 4, maybe 4.2, 4.3. Regardless, where are we going?
So
it's around there.
Think about that. So the average card in your deck costs around 4 mana in TLC. The average card in the Spiders deck costs around 1.2 or 1.5 mana.
Yeah, it's probably 1.5. That's about what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Because so much of it, 60% of it, I think costs 1 mana. And then a bunch of it's 2. And there's some 3s. And there's even a 0 in there. And then there's the 3 decimates, which are realistically cost 3.5 mana because spell mana exists. But
I didn't get that cheat card.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm not actually counting it like that. But anyway, when your deck is so cheap and every card can be played so early, the amount of decisions you have to make by turn 3 is at least double, usually triple or quadruple that of the control player by turn 3.
Absolutely.
A lot of the time the control player doesn't actually have a decision to make on until turn 3.
Yeah, and a lot of the times their decision is like, do I play my Avarosan Sentry on turn 2, or do I get hit for 9? Well, that's not a decision. Clearly, we're playing it, right? You know, like
Right. And for the aggro deck, the decision, like, especially in like an aggro mirror, you think of it this way, like, do I play out, like, your hand is like Precious Pet, Legion Saboteur, Legion Rearguard, and a 3-drop that doesn't matter. And you're turn 1, and you have the attack token. What do you do? Well, which one of those do you play into like the Spider's Mirror? So you have this Precious Pet. Well, you know, that only swings for 2, but it's definitely not getting blocked. It's impossible for it to get blocked. So that's a guaranteed 2 damage. This Legion Saboteur, it's probably going to get blocked, and it'll trade into whatever gets blocked by it, but it's definitely going to get in 1 damage because of the trigger. This Legion Rearguard, it could get in for 0, but it's definitely killing whatever it hits. And if it gets through, it's hitting for 3, which is the same amount as Legion Saboteur if it also gets unblocked.
Yeah, so we can probably rule out Legion Rearguard. But regardless, like,
there's 3 decisions to be made on turn 1.
you had to think through that whole thing, right? Yeah.
Like, which one do you
absolutely.
play? The pro tip, the answer is almost always Precious Pet if you turn 1 with the attack token, like if it's the mirror.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're always going to have a 1-drop, so.
They're always going to have a 1-drop, and
Legion Saboteur might force them to like play a Stygian Onlooker that they don't want
and
to
right,
do.
and see,
Yeah,
right,
that's like another thing that you have to
right
think
there,
about.
like the fact that decision right here, we're debating this decision right now.
Yeah,
this turn
absolutely.
1 play from this aggro deck, it's a hard decision. I don't know what the right answer is, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
there's an argument for both sides.
And as the TLC player, guess what? When I have 4 mana, I'm going to Windmill Slam Avalanche.
Yeah,
Duh.
the TLC player.
Like, you have to.
And maybe I'll pass when they have just a Precious Pet or whatever.
Yeah, or whatever. But like, yeah, there are less decisions, absolutely, especially because the aggro decks make you decide the game early. You know, it doesn't really matter that much what you do on turn 6 or 7 against spiders as TLC, right? If you're still alive and your life total's at like 10, you're just probably going to win, right? It doesn't really matter what you do from here. You have to not die.
If to not Windmill Slam Runation.
Yeah, you have to not die.
Don't
and
do
that
that one.
does matter. You have to continue thinking about how you're not going to die. But for most part, the game's pretty autopilot once you've turned the corner, right? Like once they've got 1 or 2 cards, or 1, 2 or less, I suppose is the best way to phrase this, 2 or less cards in their hand, and you're at like 10, not that much on board, like you've probably won.
Yeah, once you've stabilized.
Yeah, the game's pretty easy. Really.
Stabilize
And that
it
deck
up.
has enough healing in particular that you don't have to think about it.
Yeah. The matchups where the deck doesn't have healing are night and day.
Significantly harder,
Like, it's
yeah.
completely different. Like, you have to protect your life total so aggressively against spiders if you are a deck without
If you're
healing.
playing like Esdraven, you need to block every single time.
I don't
much.
care if you're blocking. I don't care if your Draven's blocking Legion Rearguard. You probably have to do it.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely.
It's
Not
not
close.
close even.
Yeah.
You have to slam block. Yeah, and it sucks. It gets
horrible.
harder when you wonder if you have to chump your Ezreal in their Legion Rearguard. And the answer still might be yes sometimes, right? Like, it's not going to be all the time probably, but sometimes you do need to make that block
Yeah,
or you're going to
'cause, like-
die, right?
Like, let's think about that matchup for a second. Like, I'm sure someone's thinking, oh, that can't be right. Well, the card, like,
you
you're
have 20
trading
life points. That's
Yeah,
it.
Exactly. And also, in the example of Legion Rearguard getting blocked by a Draven, that's trading card for card. Try not to think of it as mana, because the mana doesn't really matter in this particular matchup.
Correct.
Like,
Absolutely.
their entire deck costs no mana. Like, mana is just
You're going to have
free.
to beat every card they draw.
Yeah.
And the only part that matters about the mana is being able to beat every card they draw in time.
Yeah, you making sure that you plan it, that you don't waste mana when you don't need to.
Yeah.
Especially when you're as Draven. You draw more cards than they do.
Yeah.
Cards don't matter as much to you. You can trade your 3-drop for their 1-drop because you can play a lot more 3-drop. Like, you just get the chance to play more cards the longer you live. And that gets more and more true the farther the game goes.
Yeah,
Chump
absolutely.
blocking is so good in this game. People do not do it enough. You need to block in this game.
Put your
if you
1/2
aren't
on their
trading.
3/2. Do
Yes. If you aren't trading, who cares? Put your good champion in front of their. I'm gonna block that Legion Rearguard with my Ezreal on turn 5 if I'm at like 10. I don't care about my Ezreal. I don't need Ezreal to win the game. I'm gonna win the game if I don't lose.
Yeah.
You can't die. That's it. That's all that matters. You can't die. And like, not dying there's a lot of layers to not dying, obviously. And
And obviously
there's
there's
examples
also
and everything, but like for the most part, I think in the abstract, like you're supposed to block there with that Ezreal.
Another
Like
thing.
let's say it's turn 5, we're at 10, they're attacking you with this 3/2 Legion Rearguard. They've got 3 cards. It doesn't matter what we have. Like I think you need to block.
Absolutely.
Even though your Ezreal attacks and Mystic shots it next turn.
Yeah. The same is even more true of stuff like Twisted Fate. Like, you just got to trade. Now, especially, with all the nerfs, I lost a game against Spiders because I blue carded twice when I should have red carded. Like, they only had like a 1/1 or two, like they had like 2 1/1s, and I'm like, I'm probably safe to blue card here. I was not. I died. Like, I was like, I can actually flip this in like a turn. Like, I should do this. And then, I promptly died. And I was like, okay, lesson learned. Don't have to do that one again. Just trade with the Twisted Fate.
Yep.
Just red card, trade with the Twisted Fate. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and when we say plan A is don't die, we do mean that. However, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. Like,
Yeah, of course.
decks that play Decimate are very, very different than decks that do not play Decimate.
Oh, yeah.
You are going to die from a much higher life total after you've stabilized against decks with Decimate than decks without it. That's another reason aggro is so difficult, because there's so many brands of it. Like Scouts, you literally cannot kill you if they don't have a board state. It's literally impossible. They have nothing that deals damage that isn't creatures. Period. Pirates is very different. Pirates is the weirdest aggro deck I can think of.
It's the middle ground, I think.
Yeah, it's the closest. Like, it's still an aggro deck.
Kind of like it's kind of like spells and aggressive creatures.
It's like Scouts meet Spiders.
I was gonna say it's like
bastard
aggro.
baby.
It's like the closest thing to a mid range deck that's still an aggro deck. Like, it
Yeah,
is an aggro deck.
But we're playing 8 drops.
Exactly. We're
Yeah.
playing an 8-drop. The list, I think the best list only plays 1 now, or might be 0 now. But
Get those guys out of here. Play
It's
the
certainly
Dreadway.
not 0. I lost to it twice today.
Are we playing? What if we play the Dreadway instead? Fun side note.
Off it.
It draws Gangplank. The Gangplank's always flipped. They just die.
I don't hate the idea. But anyway, Pirates is weird. It's slower, but also still fast. It has so much burn. It just is able to kill you from like 14 with just burn. And
Yeah, just like chump blocking and pointing like sleep with the fishes at their 1/1s until that you die.
Yeah. Like there's so much
really
burn
ridiculous.
potential from that deck. And that's why like aggro, like in other games, you can just sort of say, this is an aggro deck. And they're all mostly the same. Like there's variations, but they're pretty damn similar.
Yeah.
This game, that's not true. When you say a deck is an aggro deck, you could be talking about Pirates, which is completely different to play than discard aggro, which is completely different to play than Scouts. Like
Completely different than burn. Yeah, et cetera, et cetera.
exactly, and that's yet another reason why I think aggro is just so interesting and so difficult in this game.
Yeah.
Is there's so many different flavors of it.
So we've talked quite a bit about the aggro mirror here. Boy, we really talked for a lot longer than I thought we were going to.
Yeah, we sprinkled some other.
Oh yeah,
special
I
salt
loved
in
it.
there.
I loved it. But I do real quick want to touch on how to play against these aggro decks from not an aggro, as you're playing not an aggro deck. And we've talked about this quite a bit already, so it'll probably be much shorter, and then we'll get into our listener questions. But the number one thing I have, piece of advice I have, if you are playing against an aggro deck as a deck that is presumably going a little bigger, mulligan very aggressively. I just talked about the fact that the Spiders deck can attack you for like 9 on turn 2 pretty easily.
Yeah.
Can your hand beat that? Right? Like every time you look at your cards, like, can your hand beat that? Yeah. I ship 4 cards looking for like Avalanche, Avaros, and Sentry, Lysandra, Vile Feast a lot.
Yeah.
Like
Vile Feast is like so insane against Spiders.
Gain a life, kill a guy, block another, like block a Saboteur.
It
like,
gains
kill
you
a
like
pet.
7 life.
Yeah,
basically.
The card is ridiculous.
So you cannot just keep this like entreat in your hand because you're like, oh, this will draw like a Lysandra. You can't keep Trundle. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like Withering Whale, probably sometime going to be too slow. Like,
Depends on the aggro deck. It's very good against Spiders, a lot less good against like Pirates
or Scouts, right? Yeah. Like, a lot of the time,
God.
not going to be good enough,
Rangers Resolve. Hello.
So like that's basically my number one piece of advice is you need to mulligan really aggressively. You need to have interaction early, and you need to have and it doesn't matter if you have your plan to win the game in your hand because you'll draw it eventually, whatever. You can win the game with 5-drop attacking for a couple turns, right? Like it doesn't really matter. Like I keep saying, you have to make sure you have the relevant early interaction, and there is no such thing as too much of it.
Yeah.
Like you should keep the triple Mystic Shot hands. Like that's where you want to be.
Yeah. And Mystic Shot even is trading down in mana.
Mystic Shot is even not that good, but
doesn't answer it on turn 1. But like
it's probably still the best Gardener deck. So
and that's the crux of the issue. Yeah, keep the healing. Like in old TF Fizz, I would actually keep Zap Sprayfin in almost all hands because that card was just so good. But you have to shift against aggro. I'm thinking about the cards I would look for if I was playing TF Fizz against aggro, and I would intend to play a different deck. Which is, especially new Twisted Fate Fizz is like not good against aggro.
Yeah, which I think is a big reason why it's seeing such a decrease in play. And we were, I'm taking a deep exhale there. I said that deck was going to be bad on air. The patch came out. Everybody was still playing it. It had like a 60% win rate still. People were like, guys, it's better than it was before. I was like, oh no. Oh no. Like, these wiggly purple fish are haunting me. I cannot get away. Thank God people aren't playing it as much anymore.
It's still like B tier.
It's still fine, but that's
where it wants to be.
That's where it should be. It's still fine, and I think it's even very poorly positioned right now. So
yeah, I think the deck is still very powerful, but it is not in a good place right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is much more in line with pretty much every other deck that Legends of Runeterra has had that's been considered healthy. I would say is they're quite powerful, do a reasonable thing, but the meta's not good for them right now. There's so many decks in that category, I think.
Yeah. I do think a really good place to be right now, you're going to be a little disadvantaged in aggro mirrors, but playing like a little bigger beatdown deck, like even these like random Jarvan decks are pretty nice because they do a really good job of hating on the Withering Whale decks that are trying to do Withering Whale and Avalanche stuff to beat aggro.
The LeBlanc decks do a good job of this as well.
LeBlanc, Thresh Nasus too.
I've seen a lot of Thresh Nasus lately. Yeah. That deck I think that I've played against that deck more than Spiders even.
Absolutely. I've never played against Spiders.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Wow. It's the Masters experience.
Oh man, that's why I need to get to Masters.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Spiders in
you remember when I asked you what that deck played? It's because I hadn't played any games with or against it. And I've played a good amount of games recently.
Brutal. Well, I mean, I guess that's good for you.
Maybe I played one. Oh, I played that one game with TF Fizz and then used the wrong mode on my TF and
died. Oh, yeah, the one game.
Yeah, it was that one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do you guys have anything else you want to add on to the end of this, like, general slate about aggro before we move on to our listener questions?
Not really. Just remember, try the decks out, learn how they work, and just it'll be easier to beat.
My biggest piece of advice for playing them is really think about when you're supposed to open attack.
Yeah.
And not just
and
don't
it
just
changes.
Say,
that's why we can't just tell you what to do. Like it changes all the time. Depends on the deck you're playing, the deck they're playing, what cards they've played so far, et cetera, et cetera.
And you're particularly I've found the best thought process for thinking about this is not just like, should I open attack? Yes, no. It's if I don't open attack, am I going to be more efficient with, like, is the attack going to get better for me? Basically, like, with the cards I have in my hand, am I going to be efficient enough to warrant giving my opponent the chance to play things? Because if you're doing more with your mana, right? Let's keep talking about Spiders. Let's say we have 3 Stygian Onlookers on our hand, right? Or, a Legion Saboteur and 2 Stygian Onlookers on turn 3, right? Almost always, your 3 mana is going to be better spent than your opponent's 3 mana, right? So you shouldn't open attack here. Yeah. You should, even if you have an open for 9, right? Like, even if we have 9 power on board and your opponent has nothing, there's no way, unless your opponent is playing like an Avalanche deck, right, that their 3 mana
specifically,
that their 3 mana is going to be better than your 3 mana. So even though that open attack is good, you should play your things because you really need to squeak out all the damage you can. And, you're going to have that conversation with yourself every single turn, which is why it's so hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And a lot of times, like, you can lead out one creature and then they don't do anything. Like, are they baiting me with Avalanche? I got to attack. Like, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, and you also have to re-ask yourself that question every time you get priority. Is okay, now is my play more efficient than theirs? Like, now that I've spent 2 of my mana, my last mana isn't that good. Should I attack now?
Yes, right, because if they have Withering Whale, I don't want my last creature to, et cetera, et cetera.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. Cool.
So I think it's time to move on to our question of the week, the listener question. So for this week, our listener question of the week comes from Skysong in the Discord. They ask, no matter what the meta, there are going to be some people that dislike it.
Ain't that the truth?
What
My
do you
God.
think are the key indicators that the competitive meta is in a healthy place? This is a hard question to answer, but I really like it. So the first thing is deck diversity. And Noble, you look like you were about to say something. So
Just gonna
fire
say,
away.
I think that there have been 50 plus articles of various card games written about this exact topic, like what makes a good meta. And it's always when people are like, this meta sucks. And there's arguments to and from. And there's a couple pillars. I think deck diversity is a huge one. I think you can have a very diverse meta that I don't think is good because the games aren't fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's like how the games are,
deck diversity, and then are the games interesting?
win rates. Like you could have a meta with 20 different decks, but one of them is 20% of the field and the rest all have like 5%. Like that's pretty balanced deck diversity wise, but like there's a clear front runner here. And that's a problem. So like a pretty flat curve is what we're looking for. But me being a huge Spike who likes to win and likes to tune decks against specific metas, I kind of hate it when there are, 10 decks that are all like 52% against the field. And it's just like so hard to prepare for. But that's a personal preference thing. I think those metas are definitely very healthy and liked.
My personal favorite metas are similar to yours. I love the like 5-deck metas.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you can't do everything. I don't want a meta where I can do everything. I don't really care if some of the champions are bad or even unplayable. Like, I just want there to be 4 or 5 decks at the top that all have interesting matches against each other. That's really all I'm looking, and that I can like try and tune and attack, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I want out of my meta.
I want my decisions to matter.
I want my decisions to matter. I want my deck building decisions to matter. I want the games to be interesting, and I love being able to spend 2 hours talking about like the one theoretical matchup. Like I love being able to sit down and ponder whether or not you're supposed to attack with your River Shaper on turn 3 against Go Hard or whatever.
Or the
Like,
Fiora Shenmue.
or the Fiora Shenmue or whatever. Like, am I supposed to mulligan Avarice and Sentry in this matchup because it's not that good, but it's still a 2-mana 2/1 that draws a card? How bad can it be? Like you can sit here and you can really optimize these matchups. And that's my favorite part about pretty much every meta.
Like I would not be happy with a 5-deck meta that was like TLC, Fiora Shen, Lee Zoe, old Go Hard, and like
some dumb
and,
karma
like,
control
spooky
deck.
karma.
yeah,
exactly.
Like the games are going to be ridiculously grindy, just like slamming Bombfest and like some random Targon like Ace deck or whatever. Like it's just going to be like such a nightmare.
Like nothing's gonna happen before turn 6.
Okay, so we're
And then
looking
you're
for
going to hedge the meta.
diversity not only of decks but of like play styles and the way games play out. Is huge. Like
Game speeds.
Yeah, if every deck is like TF Swain, Esdraven, Go Hard,
just mono
TLC,
mid-range
like
piles.
that does not sound fun at all.
Yeah, you can have 30 different decks, but if all 30 of those decks have a mana curve of 2 1-drops, 0 2-drops, 5 3-drops, and like 10 cards that are like 7+ mana, and they all have the same like costing cards in all their decks, the games are going to be very similar, and that's just not that fun.
Yeah.
And let's see. So deck diversity is one, play diversity, play speed. I think that's most of it. I personally do like this is a former Splinter Twin player saying this, so it's a little biased, but I actually am okay with the one deck has a 20% play rate and the rest have 5% because that's what Splinter Twin was.
That is usually the sign that a deck is too good. But those are I wouldn't call those metas healthy, but I do enjoy them personally. And there's been a lot of those Magic metas in recent years because of some printing of some very powerful cards.
Not okay cards.
But I do enjoy trying to play the ridiculous mirrors of busted stuff, or the, like this one deck is completely busted. Now, how do we attack it is kind of interesting, or at least can be.
Yeah, and one thing that I think that LOR has done a great job of, unpopular opinion time, is like keeping it being shaken up. Fresh. And I do think that like, TF Fizz was positioned at an unfortunate time. Like we talked about this on air once where we were like, nerfs are coming out next week, and TF Fizz became good today. So it's not getting hit. And then a new set's coming out. So there was just like this kind of gap that where TF Fizz just got to run rampant. But I do think the meta was interesting for a good amount of time. Part of that was Aphelios being so good and that dichotomy, and Fiora being so good and that dichotomy. So like I did still enjoy the meta and was still enjoying games. But I don't like it to change too much because it's good. Because if it changes every week, like if they're doing a balance patch every week, like I would probably, honestly, that is something that would make me stop playing Legends of Runeterra. Like
They'll like balance every week.
If every week, like 5 cards changed, I would just be like, what?
That's
you
too
just
much.
can't keep up.
The meta can't settle.
Yeah, the meta can't settle. Like we have no idea if these decks are actually good or if they're just annoying. So that time to breathe with like kind of rhythmic changes that make sure things, you know, aren't crazy. It is a huge indicator, very indicative of good health.
I agree.
And that kind of diversity. So.
Yeah. I just one last thing. Oh shoot! Now I forgot what I was going to say.
Do 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 do.
Oh, now I remember.
Oh, Alex nailed it. He did it.
I was going to say that even though the meta was arguably at its least healthy during the like big TF Fizz Fiora Shen spike, I don't think that was an unhealthy meta as far as card games go. Like the things that we've all seen, absolutely just horrific metagames in other cards.
Oh yeah.
Hearthstone is the most egregious, I believe, for sure.
Without a doubt.
Not close. Not really.
There were so many just awful Hearthstone metas when I was playing professionally,
And ones that didn't change for months and months and months.
I remember I played many high stakes tournaments for like, I mean, high stakes is probably the wrong word, medium high stakes, or like relevant tournaments at the time, especially for where Hearthstone was at in
you
its
ended
life.
up winning 6 figures eventually.
But like, you know how many games were decided by Nat Pagel coin flips?
Oh yeah.
So many. Like that was a lot of games. That meta was awful. And for those of you who don't know or maybe don't remember, way back when, Nat Pagel in Hearthstone was a 2-mana 0/4 that said at the end of your turn, flip a coin. If you win the flip, draw a card. And it was in every single deck. And
was it like a colorless card? It could
Yeah,
go
it could
everywhere?
go in every deck. It was the best card in the game.
2 mana?
It was 2 mana.
Lord.
It was the best card in the game by a mile. And so many, and most of what was going on, because it was relatively early in Hearthstone's life, was like mid-rangey battles, right? Because
I don't get it.
was
Why
that
can't you just
powerful.
attack it?
You can.
But it had
But
4
it's a
toughness.
0/4 for
it's-
2 mana.
It's
So it's
just
just really
you're just
hard to
playing
get.
these mid-range battles where like, you know, like it doesn't even, you know, by the time you kill it, if you've drawn 3 cards with it or whatever, like the game's probably over. Like there's a lot of clips where people drew like 4 cards in a row off Nat Pagel. And it's like, okay, this is completely unwinnable. And then a little bit later, Dr. Boom came, and you know, then every game felt like it got decided by these
card names, man?
Dr. Boom bot RNG, right? And it's a ridiculous card that happened to be like the best card in Hearthstone's history. It's like a 7-mana 7/7 that makes 2 1/1s that die and deal random damage to stuff. It doesn't sound that
sounds
impressive,
nonsense.
but
Yeah, that's
man,
thought,
the games
yeah.
were just so often decided by whether or not this boom bot killed my random 4-drop.
Yeah, and this doesn't get talked a lot about, but I remember a Magic the Gathering standard format where all anyone did for like 2 months was play these like random green-white decks that played a couple planeswalkers that made tokens, and you just like sat there for so long. The games were so boring. You both played the same 2-drop into 3-drop into 4-drop. It was awful. Like different decks playing the exact same cards. And so like as Legends of Runeterra players, we are so spoiled.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh my. Like
TF Fizz goes down is the best deck in our game. We're getting away scot-free.
Yeah.
Basically,
and that's not to say I don't want to like deride people who like get fed up with a meta, because it was annoying. It was hard to play
absolutely.
your fun decks that weren't that and get like eaten by Fiora and TLC and Fizz on repeat.
Yeah, and it's
Like,
not that you
that's
shouldn't
not
be
fun.
upset with unhealthy metas. You should be, especially with developers that are so attentive as ours are, as the Legends of Runeterra ones are, because that's how we're going to give them feedback, right? Like they should know that this meta wasn't great, so like don't do that again, or you know, try to avoid that happening again. And in the future, our game will probably be better. Same is true of other games, but like we've all lived through some pretty rough metas, and these ones were better than a lot of them, I think,
yeah,
which is
just
great.
basically where I was going with that trip down memory lane was sort of just, please remember, everyone who plays this game and who is listening to us talk about this, please remember that these devs are doing an amazing job.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you think they're doing. They are killing it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's
They
not
are
close.
so good at their job. It's actually unbelievable. Like, as people who have been on the other side of this for other things we've done, and like we've tried like balance testing for games we've put together and helped develop, like this is such a difficult job.
Yeah, do you remember what it was like playing against TF Fizz? That is what Legends of Runeterra devs are doing to other card games. They're just putting like 20 power in play, and it's unbeatable.
Yep.
Like this amount of content, and the game's like a year and a half old or something ridiculous. Like they're learning this whole time, and the fact that they're like being very transparent about like, yeah, we should have made the seasonal tournament better, and then like 2 seasonal tournaments later, it was better. And this might not be perfect either, but like that willingness to like change stuff is awesome, which is funny to me because
unmatched
I
in
remember
other devs.
griping about all the changes that Magic's going through right now and being like, this is dumb. I like the Pro Tour. So it is funny for me to say that and kind of realize that I was maybe a little stuck in my ways with Magic the Gathering. But it's just awesome.
Yeah, just they're willing to say they were wrong and they messed up. And
goes a long way.
Goes so far. And just
The fact that they nerf and unnerf cards, so
yeah,
cool.
please appreciate the devs and the work they're doing because they're doing really well.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question comes from Dr. Blues. They ask, what is your favorite follower and why is it Swole Squirrel?
It's not.
What's your favorite follower, Hugh?
I don't know off the top of my head, but someone else go real
Noble?
quick.
You got an answer?
Man. Oh God.
Your favorite follower? I've got an answer.
Yeah. What is yours?
My answer is Sparklefly.
I was gonna say I might have said that. Why?
It's so sick. Like, so I love Sparklefly because it enables. So it's so unassuming, and it really requires work to be done to make it good. It's not just the most blanketly powerful. It's my favorite because I have a personal attachment to it from the like Lee Zoe decks. I've put Sparklefly in a lot of decks because I thought it was so powerful. And I just love buffing Sparklefly and just emote spamming these like spider players with this 4/5 with lifelink. It's just hilarious watching aggro players try and beat a 4/5 or like even a 3/4 Sparklefly sometimes.
I know what mine
It
is if
so
you don't
funny.
have yours yet.
I know what mine historically is, which is going to be Novore Conspirator. I think that card is super
Ooh,
sweet.
that's a good choice.
but it's bad now, unfortunately. So
all right.
I'll think of a current one while Hugh goes.
Okay, so mine is bad and has always kind of been bad.
Well, that's fine.
And it was very close to being good, but it was still suboptimal and therefore bad because I'm a spike.
It's tier 2, so I can't play it. Damn.
This card is Coral Creatures.
Oh my god, you've
Coral
got to be kidding me.
Creatures
I
is my
hate that card.
favorite card. Is my favorite.
Seriously?
Yes, it is my favorite follower. You have no idea how many times I've built a deck with Bilgewater and been like,
What does this deck need? An unplayable 2-mana creature. Yes.
and I was just like,
perfect.
I can put Coral Creatures in this, right? And the answer every single time was no. For the longest time.
It almost
And
made it with TFS.
It almost did.
made it.
And then the final
And then
list
stress
came out.
testing, yeah.
And then
stress testing really put a nail in the Coral Creatures.
and it was
coffin.
already dead before that, but
Yeah.
like stress testing like really
killed it.
completely killed it. But
That's a sick answer. I love that. It's so
yeah,
funny.
I just love that card so much.
I have a
So here's the
burning
difference
hate for
between
that card.
Here's the difference between me and Hugh. It's that my favorite follower is Zap Sprayfin. Very similar cards. One is much better than the other.
Zap Sprayfin's a good answer.
Yeah, I really like that card. It's well designed. It's like pretty fair. It's a 4-mana 2/2. Very fun. I like it so much that I was, I'm keeping it in my mulligans. I really think that ability is really cool design because like in Pirates, it always tutors Noxian Fervor. In Go Hard, it was like finding Go Hard. And in like TFS, it was just like drawing a card. And I think that like that diversity is pretty cool. Love casting iterative improvement on it. That was the tech, by the way. This is not relevant anymore, but in the in the Burblefish mirrors, like if you weren't going to die, you should not be iterating improvement 0 mana 3/2s. You should be getting 4 mana 2/2s to draw a card.
That's sick.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question comes from Colors. They ask, current pick for most underrated deck. I've got an answer. I'm not even sure that it maybe underrated is not the case, but my pick is just like LeBlanc decks, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel the need to say which one specifically, because there's a couple different variations that are pretty similar, but like LeBlanc Sejuani, I've seen some like LeBlanc Sivir decks running around, particularly in our Discord. I know that I think actually it was Colors in particular who's been trying to get people to play their LeBlanc Sivir deck, and I played a few games with it. It was quite good. I think LeBlanc is like quite good right now, and she's not seeing that much play because I think everybody's getting pretty into these spider things, but I'm going to be surprised if we don't have a LeBlanc deck in tier 1 by the time this meta fully settles. Yeah. I think
my answer is probably Go Hard. I've been pretty impressed with it on the mirror. Don't have a great list. It's just great against aggro decks. Very fun. Like putting in Dreadway Ledros like makes you be able to beat some control decks. I had a very fun game where I just like cast Ledros like 6 turns in a row. Just eventually got there.
I had a game where I was playing TLC against that, and my opponent cast Ledros like 6 turns in a row, and then I won
because you had Watcher.
Yeah, eventually.
I don't have a great answer for this because I feel like people are pretty on to the fact that Lulu's pretty solid now. But I do think that people are much more into Shen Jarvan than Shen Lulu. And I really, really like Shen Lulu. Sorry. There's the most of the list I see running around are like Shen is the top of the curve for this deck. That's not the version I like. That one has like Flower Child and stuff. I literally took Lulu and traded out all three of my Fioras for Lulu's and traded out trade out 3 other cards. Sorry, I traded out all 3 of my Fioras for 3 Laurent Proteges, and then found 3 random other slots for Lulu. And I just played that deck, and that deck was great.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's particularly good, but it was really fun, and it works.
Yeah. So I'm going to piggyback a little bit off what Noble said. We have a question here from Calcifer. They ask, will Go Hard see a return with so much aggro in the meta? So, I mean, clearly you think yes. I'm going to join you in that. I think that it should, actually. Yeah. I think that there is almost certainly a place for Go Hard somewhere. I played against a lot of Go Hard today.
Yeah.
Just not necessarily the TF Go Hard decks, but I just played against the card Go Hard a lot.
Like Ezreal versions?
I played
like
against
Arena Control.
I played against a like Targon Go Hard deck.
Ooh, wow.
That was playing
Kindred?
It was not playing Kindred. It was playing Zoe Thresh, I think. It was playing like
Weird.
Zoe Thresh Go Hard.
Pretty sick.
It was pretty good, honestly. And they were playing
a lot of Thresh Nasus Go Hard.
yeah, I've seen LeBlanc Go Hard decks that was playing Mimic to like make extra copies of Go Hard. I played against that today.
For 3 mana?
It has reputation, but I mean, yeah, that's what they were doing.
Does Packer Bags give a bunch of reputation pings or just one?
That's
I don't think it's any.
A creature has to strike.
Yeah,
Oh,
the unit has to strike, right?
Damn tragic.
But yeah, anyway, that was kind of interesting, and they were playing like Whispered Words and stuff. I've played against like the actual TF Go Hard deck. All of these have looked pretty good to me. Like, I think putting Go Hard in your deck is probably just a good choice right now. Like, even if you aren't, one of my favorite like deck tweaks I ever made was when I was playing a spider aggro deck, or it was maybe it was the Mistrace deck. That's what it was. It was the Mistrace deck. As soon as Zoe was like the most popular champion in the game, I just cut my Vile Feast for Go Hards. And I was never planning on casting Pack Your Bags. I just wanted my removal spell to be 1 mana instead of 2, and it was great. Yeah. Like I even cast Pack Your Bags one time, and it just won me the game on the spot. It was great, and granted the Pack Your Bags was 1 mana back then, so it was way better. But still, like I only put 2 copies of Go Hard in my deck. Like I didn't even put the 3rd one, and I didn't really care about casting Pack Your Bags, and it was really good because it killed Zoe before it hit me, and it was only 1 mana, and you only really ever took turn 1 off with that deck. You never took turn 2 off, so you only ever had 1 spell mana. Yeah. So anyway, I think Go Hard should be good, and I think that we're going to need somebody to show us the best list because there's a lot floating around right now. I'm not even certain that it's in a Twisted Fate list. It might not be,
Twisted Fate might be bad now. That's another thing is like with the Dreadway getting better and potentially being something you want to play alongside Ledros. I don't even know if that's true, but it's possible. Wanting to play at least a couple Gangplanks for the Dreadway to draw. Wanting to play Elise because it's a great 2-drop. Wanting to play Twisted Fate and wanting to potentially play Kindred. Like your champ slots are real slim.
All right. Our next question comes from Keon Spy. They ask, are there any regions you don't like to play? For me, it's Freljord and Demacia. Huh.
Shurima is my go-to
Ooh,
answer.
interesting.
I hate playing Shurima. I can't stand it.
Well, I just haven't done it because it's bad.
It's not even that. I just like, it's partially that. I think Shurima is my number one. My number two has historically always been Demacia. Like before Shurima came out, I just didn't ever play Demacia in anything but Fiora Shen, and that was like only technically Demacia for the most part.
I think my least favorite region to play is probably Freljord. Which is kind of interesting because I don't know. I play a lot of Freljord decks still because I think they're good. I mean, I don't know. I'm a
Those
Spike.
are all secretly Shadow Isles decks.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm a Spike, so like I'm just gonna play whatever's good and I'm gonna have fun with it for the most part. But I think like from an abstract perspective, like I think I genuinely think that the Freljord decks are usually the least cool.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've definitely played a lot of Trundle decks and like Trundle ramp decks in my day. I think that's true. My actual answer is Targon.
Really?
Yeah,
I love Targon. That's my favorite region.
Oh, so I actually love Zoe. I really like Lee Zoe. I like Sparklefly. There's a lot of parts of that I like. So maybe it's not the best answer, but the like invoke mirrors that are just like, or just like playing an invoke deck.
Those are my favorite.
And just like your hand is 10 cards and the
Every
average
turn,
cost.
it's great.
And the average cost of your cards is
like 7.5.
7 mana. And you're just like slamming them back and forth. Like maybe I'm just haunted by like the period after Targon came out in which the expeditions were double weighted towards Targon.
No.
And so every expedition was a Targon mirror. And it was awful.
No. This is exactly what the constructed Targon decks are like too.
I understand, but I'm saying that I played so many mirrors in that expedition formats, and the decks were worse, so it was grindier.
That was like my favorite expedition time. I loved the Targon mirrors. I am such a sucker for Targon mirrors. They're so much fun. They're like 40 minutes long every time, and they're
Ace's so stupid. He doesn't do anything. He gets chump blocked.
Love it. All right.
Resolving Eclipse Harassment feels so awful because you look at 2 cards that you're never going to freaking play. Sorry. I'm just mad about it.
All right. Next
They
up,
buffed that card. Sorry.
Karenel asks, given all of your backgrounds in MTG, what is a card design you'd like to see in LOR from that game? Interesting.
I think the easiest answer is how would they implement planeswalkers?
Oh, yeah.
That's a good answer. I just want like, all right. My answer is like cards with flashback or like Snapcaster Mage.
Things involving the discard.
Something like Snapcaster Mage. I don't really know how it would work in this game. Maybe, I mean, it probably would work something like Spell Thief. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say discover a spell or create a spell you've cast this game.
Yeah, it gets fleeting or whatever.
Yeah,
I think
or
that
like-
card would be sweet.
Yeah,
Now I can put it in Ionia so I can pick it up with my like Navori Conspirators.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Cool ETB effects that fiddle with that. I would love like an activated ability. Like you can like maybe click the card and like it'll be like, you know, when you activate it, it gives you a choice to like pay 2 gems to like do something.
That'll come in time.
Yes, but it's just
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good. There's so much design space there. Gwent did the same thing, and that's where that like really took off.
I wouldn't be surprised if they never like let you reanimate specific things that have died because the game just doesn't actually have a graveyard.
It doesn't really have a graveyard.
Discard.
Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
All right. So in a similar vein, Dragon asks, given your magic backgrounds as well, what card in LOR do you think would be the most powerful in Magic? This is hard. So I guess let's start with, do my creatures have haste?
Like, do they have haste?
Because obviously they don't have haste, and they don't say haste in Legends of Runeterra, but they functionally have haste. So just every creature
I'm gonna say
have
no.
haste. Okay, so none of them have haste,
Real
which
quick,
is fine.
I just actually thought of my answer, and it's Monastery of Harama.
Piranha.
Harana.
Oh, so it would be like an enchantment.
No, yeah, and it'd just be an artifact.
Sure.
It'd be an artifact that at the start of each turn you.
Basically, it's going to say 1, return a creature you control to your hand. You can activate this ability only once each turn.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And like only as the sorcery, does Monastery of Harana have the things have focus?
It has focus.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. You really think that would be the most powerful card in Magic?
From Legends of Runeterra, one of them, yeah. Because like I'm thinking about a lot of the creatures. They're kind of overcosted. Like it wouldn't be the Dreadway, and maybe it would be the Dreadway because Magic has so many
Costs
ramps.
8 mana.
Yeah, but there's so many ways to get to 8 mana.
Have you read Torbran, my friend?
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. I think that it has to be some like something aggressive. Maybe it's Zoe. I take it back. It's Zoe. I think it's Zoe.
Oh,
a 1 mana
God.
1/1 with flying air quotes that draws a card every time it hits.
No, you're right.
And then like generates more value and eventually wins the game. I think that's my answer.
Yeah, I think that's the best.
Might
answer.
also be like some nonsense. Like I really wouldn't be surprised if it was like also do burst spells have burst? Like probably not.
I think they would have
do.
split second. Yeah.
Split second, like, and, you know, rummage might be really nuts. Like something dumb that has the discard put me into play trigger.
Oh,
God.
yeah, that
Like
could be
jury
true.
rig. Like
Tail of the Dragon, maybe?
Tail of the Dragon would be very
0
good.
mana 3/2s.
Oh yeah.
I also think that the low hanging fruit answer is just like Legion Rearguard, like just one mana,
just a 1 mana 3/2.
Oh yeah, because
Can't block.
Gorehouse Trainwalker is literally the same card, but it's a 2
2
drop.
mana, and it was like standard playable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I thought about that one too.
Stuff like that. If Sky Shadows like just actually untapped your lands, it would be really, really good. Felios would be nuts, obviously.
Stalking Shadows would be really good.
A lot of these are hard to like.
Hard to port, yeah, because they don't really function in a physical card game. But
Also, the like inherent game mechanics fundamentally don't transfer super well.
But yeah,
totally.
something along those lines.
Totally.
I think it would have to be some random cheap card because the
Like
mana system in LOR doesn't quite transfer to the mana system.
Spells
in
don't really
Magic.
transfer well because they're so overcosted because spell mana exists.
and then
relative to
like
Magic.
old Shadow Assassin just like would be good in Magic, but not that good. Like 3 mana 2/2 flyers that draw a card is just like not necessarily
Windrake
playable.
saying draw a card
would
does not.
would not make it legacy playable
No.
or modern playable or any. I mean, it'd be great in standard probably, but there's no way. it'd
Yeah,
go
but
anywhere
like
near
also you're
modern.
tapping out for that in your like random blue deck and things that good.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question comes from Dr. Blues. They ask, what is, in your opinion, a good deck versus the current aggro meta that doesn't die to Trundle Lysandra as well?
I think the moment you have answered that question, you've done it.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't know. I don't have a good answer.
Yeah. No clue.
Go
hard is the best thing I could think of.
Can that deck beat the Watcher? Like not really.
I mean,
That's the thing, yeah.
I don't think it's. I mean, at least you have game, right? Like you're not really going to beat the Watcher, but you can try and like Ledros them and
Pretty hard to kill Lysandra.
like, yeah. I don't really think that. To be honest, I don't think that Go Hard has a good matchup against Trundle Lysandra, but I don't really know what deck has a good matchup against Trundle Lysandra that doesn't die to all these aggro decks because I think that
It could just be a Demacia. It could just be like one of the like Shen.
like a
Shen
random
Tarpon.
Demacia deck maybe.
No, those decks get run over so
I think that
hard.
Thresh Nasus is the closest thing.
Yeah.
to this
but
because
it is bad in the aggro mirror, right?
I don't think it's particular. See, I think it's like 45% against both decks, against like all the aggro and against Trundle Lysandra, which I think is like bad clearly. But I think that that's as like the closest matchup spread you can get.
One
for those
second,
two decks,
opening up
'cause
my
the whole
client
point,
so that I can like browse.
yeah, I think the whole point of Trundle Lysandra is that you can't deal with this in the aggro decks.
It's a
like
squeeze.
you just like and that's really where a lot of the power from TLC is coming. It's that like decks have to be able to beat these aggro decks, so they're not going to be ready for you because you know what? How are you going to beat the Watcher? Like you're not just going to put cards that beat the Watcher in your deck that's tech to beat aggro. Like it's
So
not
is
going
the
to work.
answer maybe a Targon deck? Like
Maybe a
that has
Targon
bunch of
deck.
healing,
Yeah,
you
it
can,
could be like Lee Zoe. but like
That
that
Lizo is not great against aggro.
Oh,
it's not great,
oh.
but like with Sparkle Flies and like,
Did we break
This
it?
is where we start playing the 1 mana shuffle in 5 messengers for value.
oh no, anything but that.
Yeah, no, don't do that. That's bad. That was a joke.
Oh gosh,
right.
I'm like
Still in
racking
the
my
tank.
brain.
I mean, I don't think there's an
Old
answer.
Fiora Shen.
Old Fiora Shen.
Yeah, but
There you go.
Maybe. Oh god.
All right.
So the secret about Old Fiora Shen, I was wanted to say this earlier. The only reason that deck was good against aggro is Fiora. So when you're not playing it, the deck is so ridiculously clunky. Like Riposte, never going to win
Yeah,
the game
that's
against
true.
aggro. Yeah.
All right. Next up, Emmy Kayla asks, how do you balance data, matchups, and win rates from external sources with your own experience? How about smaller data sets versus larger but less precise, i.e. filtering by ranks, region, date? Every source seems flawed in one way or another, but it's what we've got to work with. All right, so almost always I trust my experience more than like the data shows you something that you can't feel in a game, right? Like you can't really know that you're 52% in a matchup. You can feel slightly ahead, very ahead, right? Like, but those are really the gauges. It's like slightly favored, very favored. And like I can probably tell you those by playing a matchup many times. I'm never going to be able to get you 52%, 51.5%. You're 53% in this matchup, right? So like having the actual numbers to back up how you're feeling, I think matters a lot. It's also a really nice sanity check. Like, oh, like I think this matchup is good. Oh my God, it's bad. Why do I keep winning?
Yeah.
Or like, why do they think it's bad? Why do the numbers say it's bad? Why do I think it's good?
Yeah.
So I love balancing. My favorite way to use data is to compare it to my own notes, basically, and be like, does this line up? If no, why? And that's where you usually get a lot of the like real insights about matchups, or like, oh, it's because I drew Avalanche every game or whatever, you know. How about you guys?
I would say that though that's one of, I think that's the biggest way I use data. I also try and actually that's honestly the biggest way I use data.
Yeah.
I was gonna say
Me too. I think we use it pretty similarly. So.
yeah.
And I think that's a staple of competitive players.
I
for
agree.
Sure.
Yeah,
You have to. My advice would be to draw your own conclusions before you look at the data.
Absolutely.
Then check yourself against the data.
And it's also worth noting that the data can be wrong, or you can disagree with it. Like it's hard to. I guess the data can be wrong isn't actually true. Like the data can't be wrong, but you can have a reason why you don't agree with it, that you think, you know, maybe other people are built their deck wrong, or maybe other people are playing the matchup bad. Maybe people aren't mulliganing enough. You think this matchup's actually 50-50 instead of 55-45 or whatever, like the data says, because people are playing bad. You know, those are all very good discussions and good reasons to have. Like, basically don't discount your own opinion because the data says otherwise. Try and reason out why you and the data have a difference, and you can learn a lot.
Another thing that's really important is we talk about this a lot, but like what level you're on. So like level 1 is like looking at the data and you're like, oh, these 3 decks have a 56% win rate. That's what I'm going to ladder with. But then you can think, everyone else sees this data too. What conclusions are they going to draw, and how can I exploit that? Like if, Trundle Lysandra is well played, is like very played, so people are going to target it, so I'm going to play this like random aggro deck that's like going to beat up on these like random mid-range decks trying to
Beat the Watcher.
beat the Watcher, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next up, we have a question from Dustin. After a little bit of clarification, they ask, is there an overabundance of choice in Legends of Runeterra? When I think of games like Magic or Poker, it feels like there are significantly less choices to be made in each game. How do you guys deal with the sort of exhausting number of decisions?
So before Alex goes on a diatribe about poker, which he will, which I'm excited for, but before that happens,
It won't be that long.
I would like to get into how I feel about this question. And that is, I completely understand where you're coming from with how you feel about this. Like, it is exhausting to make all these choices. There are a ton of choices all the time. For step 1, best advice is, like, the most simple advice is find a deck that's easy. Like we talked about,
Or that you just vibe with.
yeah, like, and that's actually the next step. I think step one is like literally like look at 10 decks and go like these 3 are probably the easiest, and then like try them out.
Yeah.
And then from those 3 decks, like distill it a little more and like find what you have fun with. The best answer is always what you have fun with. It doesn't matter like if you're doing like what you play the game for fun. Like if you're getting tired from playing the game,
And quit playing the game. At least put it down for now.
Yeah, put it down for a little bit, or find ways to have more fun. Like
Go play a lab.
because exactly. Like I play lab all the time to take a break from
I
ladder.
love the labs.
Yeah, you get to power trip super hard unless you're playing Talia, and
And then she's fine.
and then then it's a different kind of challenge, and that's a whole separate thing. But like, yeah, just find a way to have fun is the best way to deal with fatigue from this game.
Go ahead.
I'll go before your poker diatribe. I'll also do a little bit of a poker diatribe. Yeah, this game is incredibly difficult. It is so much more often in this game that you're going to face those choices like we talked about, because all of the cards in your hand are potentially castable if you have the mana for them or the gems for them or whatever. Unlike Magic, where often you're going to be like, I have a 2-drop and a 3-drop and 4 lands. Like I'm going to go land, 2-drop, land, 3-drop. Like it plays itself. Where in Legends of Runeterra, all of your cards are castable. You don't have to worry about that. So your decisions are expanded infinitely. So one is developing some heuristics. Like you
That's what I was going to say.
just be like, oh, I don't need to play Hush because there's
nothing
nothing
to
to Hush. Yeah. And just kind of like getting down into the patterns of your deck. Playing the same deck is so huge because it makes you make those decisions quickly. Fiora Shen is a very hard deck, but if you've played it for 100 games, it gets a lot easier to figure out the decisions. Same is true
Your
for
brain's
Zoe.
going to create mental shortcuts. So basically my quick answer here is make mental shortcuts. Take them. You need to understand why you're making them, and especially if you're trying to really analyze your play and really step it up to the next level, it's important to analyze each decision. But I don't expect, I certainly don't, nor do I expect any other player to play like that every single game. That's not really feasible, right? Like
you
cannot play at 100% every game.
You can't think about every decision every game. Just stop.
can't.
If you're doing it, stop doing it.
Yeah,
too
if you do, you're only going to be able to play 2 or 3 games at a time. And if that's how you play, that's totally fine. If you can only play 2 or 3 games a day, regardless for whatever reason, then I highly encourage you do play them like that, right? Because you need to get the most out of the games you're playing. But if you're someone who plays a little bit more, you average playing. Let's say that you play Legends of Runeterra for 10 hours a week, right? I would say that that's probably quite a bit less than any of us in this room. On average,
No.
maybe not anymore, but
he was pretty busy.
he was pretty busy, but it's certainly less below average for us.
Yeah.
Regardless, I can't think about every single decision. I have a bunch of heuristics when I'm playing on stream. Like I play really bad a lot of the time because I'm distracted talking with people. And you fall back on your heuristics, right? So it's okay to play bad, and you can't get it also comes down to try not to get mad at yourself for playing bad. This game is so hard. Yeah. Like it's so hard. Nobody plays every game perfect.
If games were like if like non-physical games like esports were a scale, and on one side was chess, which is that like literally the only thing that matters is player skill. Like there's no variance, versus like, I don't know, sitting in a room and flipping coins. I think, contrary to popular belief, we're going to do the diatribe about poker now. Poker's a lot closer to chess than it is to the others, and I think it has a ton of play skill. Magic is honestly in the middle, and that is part of what makes it great, is that if you are you just picked up your deck, but you know how the game works, and you're playing against the best player in the world, you're not 0% to win. In chess, you are absolutely 0%.
Yeah, you could never win. I could never beat Magnus Carlsen in chess.
Yeah, and in Smash Melee, or in like Melee, you can never beat the best players.
Or like League of Legends. I am 0% to win a game of League of Legends against a professional player. Pretty much. Like it's just not, or at least, my group of 5 players could never beat a professional team, right?
Yeah.
There's a world where I get, hard carried or whatever. But regardless, I'm never going to win. It's basically 0%.
Yeah.
And in this game, I think that there's a lot of play skill to be leveraged.
More than other card games,
I think
but
it is
still less than those.
I think it is the highest play skill card game. So I think it is basically, I think it is as close to chess as you can get with a card game, almost. Honestly, I think poker, like I said, so here's the real quick, I'm going to keep it quick, I swear, poker thing. I think poker is actually even less variance than Legends of Runeterra on average. There's some bigger beats and some worse feel bads in poker, because when you lose in poker, you usually lose a few $100s to a bad draw or whatever. But like when in Legends of Runeterra, you lose 20 LP, so you don't remember it as much. So people talk about the bad beats in poker a lot, but they're usually less likely to happen. The thing about poker is that it's all about the expected outcome, and that's true in the other games as well, but really that's all that matters in poker. So I think poker is really low variance. I think that Legends of Runeterra is like very close. I think it could be slightly lower variance than poker, probably has a little more variance than poker just because there's more going on. Like
Magic, Magic, Pokemon.
Yu-Gi-Oh is like the...
Yu-Gi-Oh isn't a card game. Yu-Gi-Oh is a TV show that you can play with your cards.
Like Yu-Gi-Oh's an interactive anime.
I was talking about this with a friend recently. There are not people who design Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Like, they're not like a development team.
The show writers.
It's like the show writers are like, this card exists, and they're like, I guess.
What do we need for the ultimate Deus Ex Machina this show? I don't know. Design it.
It's
just how it goes. Yeah.
Sorry, those Yu-Gi-Oh lovers out there. It's fun.
I do like Yu-Gi-Oh, for what it's worth. I like playing the game. Anyway, I think that that brings us to our last question, which is very similar in the same vein. Colors asks, so I want to put my 2 cents on this question. How do you feel about the number of decisions, especially ambiguous decisions in Runeterra versus Magic? I kind of feel like LOR has more decisions that generally matter. And as they point out, Magic is often more poker, which I think is more of a like, there's less decisions to be made.
Which is true
in that game, which there are significantly less decisions to be made in poker. And this kind of gets back down to the like core of the question is like, how do you deal with this many decisions? I love having this many decisions because I love having the agency over the card games. I love going into the tank for 45 seconds, thinking about every decision and then coming out with these answers. And like, that's just how I really enjoy getting into card games. So I'm all about all the decisions to be made. And Magic has a lot of decisions to be made too. I think Magic, people talk about how it's impossible to play a perfect game of Magic, right? Like, or damn close at least. And like, I stand by, that's probably true in Legends of Runeterra too. The pass decision, the fact that you can pass on any priority adds so many decisions.
Yeah. It also, I also think that there are more decisions in Legends of Runeterra, but each individual decision likely matters less than games of Magic. Like, there are like very pivotal decision points in Magic games where you just like have to decide. Which, Magic, we're not bashing on Magic. Magic is a very skill intensive game. Like, the best players in the world, pretty damn consistent. Like, some people have like absurd 80% win rates. Like, that's lifetime. Like, that's nuts. There's definitely less of an overload of decisions. And it's really hard, and mostly I'm just like trying to knock things off. Like, okay, I could spend this mana on a gem. I'm not doing that. I could cast this burst spell right now, but I'm banking 3 mana. There's no reason to do that. Like, stuff like that. That's a huge one. Like, if there isn't a reason to do something, you can just not do it. Like, it is totally okay not to do things.
How about you, Hugh? How do you feel?
The only thing I'll add on to this is in a game where I like the amount of decisions. I agree that can be a little exhausting or overwhelming at times. But at the end of the day, I like how many decisions we have, because at the end of the day, if you are a better player than your opponent, that usually means you, on average, make the right decision more often than they do. And given more options for more decisions, you have more opportunities to make that right decision.
Yeah, you get more chances to levy your play skill.
Exactly. And that's what I like about this game. And I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely. So that brings us to the end of this episode. So I want to thank you all for listening. Real quick, I do want to make a quick plug. We have started streaming. The 3 of us collectively have started streaming on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ChampSelectPodcast. We've been streaming and plan to continue streaming 6 days a week between the 3 of us. So
it's a lot of hours, baby.
Yeah. So if you want to come out, hang out, play some Legends of Runeterra with any of us, we've been announcing when we're going live in our Discord. We've been tweeting about it. So make sure to follow us on Twitter. Join the Discord. The links for all of these things will be in the description of whatever platform you're listening to this on. And with that, I want to say thank you to everyone for listening to this episode of Champ Select, and we will see you all next week.